I should have known I'd be making a video like this, but I'm not complaining because I have a lot of things to say about this special, or at least enough that I can provide. If you are only following my YouTube account and nothing more, then I can go ahead and say that South Park is my favorite adult cartoon, if not my favorite cartoon ever. And since there have been so many reviews on the show, I might as well insert my 2 cents in, and what better way to do that than to talk about the 2 post-COVID specials. I was pretty pumped to see a movie like this ever since Trey Parker and Matt Stone signed a $900 million deal, and everyone was rightfully freaking out about it because they knew that despite everything going on in the world, they knew not to give up on their show. And the first thing they made us was an episode showing us what the future brings us after COVID. The shocking force for me was definitely the trailer, considering that we got to see the boys as adults and not seeing each other for years since the pandemic started. I know this isn't too surprising because the vaccination special has established the kids hating each other and things never being the same between them. But in this special we get to see what they have become. Stan is becoming like his father, which once again has been established in a couple episodes. Kyle is an online guidance counselor, which I'm assuming at this point is what the pandemic special was foreshadowing when Kyle said that he wants to compete for a job when he's older. Cartman is suddenly a rabbi with his own wife and 2 kids, but Kyle was under the impression that Cartman was fucking with him since he's been doing that since they were kids. And Kenny is a hippie scientist that throughout the entire event was trying to find a way to stop the pandemic, and he'd figured going back in time is the only way to do so. I thought their adult forms were very accurate to their child selves, especially because of the events that led up to it, but they still sort of had their inner child inside of them since that's how they almost always think, despite also thinking like adults as well. One example is how Kyle still hated Cartman even when he became a Jew and he was under the impression that he was a fraud. But once again, he actually has a family, but it makes Kyle so jealous to the point throughout the entire special he's still holding a grudge against him. And it turns out at the end, Eric felt the same way about Kyle. This just shows that Cartman and Kyle will always be arch rivals until the end of time. Like, I literally thought they would actually come around for once and be friends, and while they have been through a ton of adventures together, they still wouldn't admit that they're cool with each other. I'm not trying to say that the Cartman and Kyle hate relationship is repetitive. In fact, looking back at some of the older episodes, they're so iconic that they can never go away. I got a number of laughs from this movie, which I was expecting since it's obvious that South Park has the ability to pull off humor that can make almost everyone laugh, and this special was no exception. However, my only downside is with the human Alexa, especially with the second parts, and even though I found her funny on a few occasions, I just feel like she slows down the pacing a bit. These types of scenes clearly resemble the constant arguments that Randy and Sharon have in the recent episodes, and this was a gag that I was never really a fan of, but I could see why it had to be included considering that it would just be stale if every episode just focused on the boys, especially when the show has been on for 24 years. But I think the best part out of the entire special is when the gang tries to find out who was responsible for Kenny's death, and Kenny ends up revealing that it was Cartman, Stan, and Kyle's fault because they let the pandemic break up their friendship and became assholes about it. But then they suddenly came to the realization that what Kenny said was true, and they want to stop the pandemic from ever happening so that they can still be friends. But Cartman actually has other plans as he realizes he wants to stop Kyle from going back in time, and the only way to do so is by killing him, which was the entire plot of the next special. Exactly 1 month later after the post-COVID special, we got exposed to post-COVID, the return of COVID. You know, after liking the first one, I was expecting this one to be just as good, but Trey and Matt found a way to make the special even better, and it really shows just by looking at it. For example, the beginning of it felt like a classic South Park episode where the boys are just being kids and having fun, but during the beginning it was revealed to be a dream that adult Stan has every single night, and we see the struggle that he's going through during this pandemic, which, even though it's relatable, it doesn't feel like anything new considering that we've seen him go through this type of shit before in numerous episodes. But for the rest of the special, Stan and Kyle are trying to stop Cartman from killing Kyle, so they end up having to talk to Victor Chaus, who actually happens to be Butters, and the reason why he was like this is because, obviously enough, his parents didn't love him and grounded him for 16 years. And throughout all of that, Butters was no longer the innocent kid that he used to be. Instead, he's ruining people's lives by investing in Kenny's wild experiments by lending him capital before delivering a sales pitch for NFTs. I honestly thought this was a neat change for Butters because we all knew him as the innocent kid who was always everyone's little bitch, especially Cartman. But over the course of the show, he's learned to stick up for himself but still keeping that happy-go-lucky attitude he's maintained for seasons. It's also interesting when the special looks like Butters is one of the main antagonists of it, but just like his child self, Cartman would always manipulate Butters, and that's what he did throughout the entire special. Speaking of the future, there's a flaw I've noticed in both of these movies, and that's the fact that there will be a character who will say, "It's the future," or "The future sucks." And to be honest, I feel as if that's just an excuse to make random changes in the future, which doesn't bother me too much, but it would have been better if they cut that running gag. There's also another nitpick where Randy constantly takes a jab at Space Jam 2, and I'm not saying you can't hate it, but I didn't really find that movie all that bad, and I'm just questioning if it really deserved all the hate. But one moment I really liked about this movie is the scene with Stan and Randy. It's so funny that despite the fact that I was never a fan of the Integrity Farms era of the show, I still felt bad for Randy, and I could tell he put a lot of effort into what he pursues, only for Stan to completely burn it down. Which, in all honesty, you would totally understand why he would even engage in that type of behavior. But I think the best thing out of this entire special was the message towards the end, where the boys came to understand that you can't stop the pandemic from ever happening, but you can change how you feel about it. And they do that by blackmailing a little girl named Heather Williams into getting them into a Denver Nuggets game, and that's how they got to keep their broship. And I thought it was a sweet ending because it just shows that people need to cut each other some slack during these tough times. Now, if only people could do that in the real world. But then we get to see all the characters living happy and better futures. Well, all except for one.
Fuck you guys! You can suck my fucking dick! Fuck you!
I know what I'm gonna say sounds crazy since this is Eric Cartman we're talking about, but I just felt bad that this is the actual future he has to live with for the rest of his life. The only good thing I can say about this is that he did this just so Cal can have a better future than him. After all, he was the one who came up with the idea to blackmail Heather in the first place. Some people may say that Cartman deserved it because he was the one who wanted to take Kyle's life, but this was one of those moments where it felt like he had to do it to protect the people he actually cared for. But then Cartman's family admits that they don't want to be alive because they think they'll end up like Kyle, and that's where it got Cartman to where he is now. These two specials were such eye-openers for me, and I could tell you that the creators had a blast working on these movies, and it really shows just the amount of effort they put into them. But honestly, if Matt and Trey didn't sign the deal for more episodes and movies, then as far as I'm concerned, this would have been an amazing series finale. I know that they're already planning more this year and the upcoming years, but I doubt that they would be good as post-COVID. But hey, I can't see in the future, so I guess only time will tell.